My name is Scott Hampton. I live in Visalia, California. It's between Fresno and Bakersfield and the gateway to Sequoia National Park, if anybody's familiar with that area. And I've been wood turning for a little over 20 years. I've been doing demos. I started out doing demos for clubs in my local area, probably 2008, so 14 years ago. And then about 2 years before the pandemic hit, I started branching out from the my local area, and I started doing demos in Washington and Oregon and places like that, and down to San Diego. And then the pandemic hit, and so I went and bought a whole bunch of cameras and turned my shop into half TV studio and half wood turning studio. So it's always a technical wonder in here as far as that goes, having all the cameras around. So today we're going to work on finials. I'm going to do 3 different kinds. We're going to start out with the type you use on like the lidded boxes. Well, let me show you real quick. We got like Christmas ornaments. You can see there. Get a good view of that. There we go. You can make all kinds of different shapes and sizes. And this is a different one. These are colored with milk paint, by the way, in case you're interested in that. My next IRD is going to cover a lot of the coloring and the texturing. Now this is different. A lot of people aren't sure what kind of shape that is until I tell them, but it is a ballerina. If you can see that. Now that you know what it is, you can tell. So you can do all kinds of shapes. You can do bottle shapes and with a wine glass on top, all kinds of different shapes. So we're just going to go ahead and just make a basic onion shape to start with. This is what I'm talking about, the onion shape here. And it gets narrow in this area. Little details on the bottom there. So the first thing I want to do is I want to round this over. So I'm going to grab me a small roughing gouge. I believe this is a 1 inch, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. So 1 inch roughing gouge. It's great for using on small pieces like this. I need to lower my tool rest a little bit. Once we get going here, we'll be fine. There we go. Always make sure your cuts are centered when using a roughing gouge. Make sure everything's good and tight. Start your lathe without the speed and just turn it up. It's going to be out around a little bit because I just put it in the pin jaws here. And it was cut a little crooked. It came that way. But with these, I don't use support on the ends when I make these type of finials. I find that it actually causes more problems than not having it. So I'm going to just start rounding this over. Just start in the middle here and just work my way towards the end. I'm at about 2,000 RPMs. Yeah, let's see, I'm going to get me a different view. There we go. You guys can see both there. So these are just roughing cuts. We're just trying to get this thing around. This helps balance the piece also before we get to the detail work. So I do believe we got that round. Yes, we do. So what I want to do is I'm just going to do roughest shape. I'm just going to narrow the end here. And we're just going to work from this end further back. So I need to lower my tool rest a little bit more now that we got it rounded down. So match the height. Makes the cut more easy. And that's a little too low. Just need to raise it up just a little bit. Gotta keep remember to brush this off so you guys can see what's going on. There we go. Good height. It's gonna sound like you got some vibration there, but that's normal. So I've already got this kind of planned out in my head. But what I wanted, this area here is going to be thin, so I'm just taking some of that wood down already. We're going to taper this area right through here, and this area is going to have a point at the end here, so we're just going to continue with that. Work your way back as you make the point. There we go. We don't want a real sharp point because if it falls, it can snap this whole section off. So you want to keep it a little dull. Now we got a nice little point there. You want to work your way back with the sandpaper because the piece does get weak as you work your way down. So we'll just do a real quick touch up there and around over the tip. Now what I'm going to do, I got a whole slew of small wood turning tools here that you guys are going to see me working with. And this is a 1/4 inch, I believe. I always forget my measurements. Yeah, 1/4 inch detail gouge. And it's got a very long swept back grind there, as you can see. There we go. Kind of a small, nice small detail gouge. You could use larger ones if you practice, but I find using these smaller ones on smaller pieces is easier to go. So what I want to do now is I'm just going to make a diving cut right in this area here. And to do that, I'm going to start the bevel rubbing without a cut going first. Just get it straight up and down there. And once I start the cut, I'm going to give it a twist. Kind of push it in at the same time until I'm like 90 degrees in. And we can just clean that up a little bit. And we got our first detail. Now you guys can see that detail right here. So now what we want to do is we're going to grab that roughing gouge again. We're going to just start taking this area down. We're going to work towards the headstock first. It's nice gentle cuts. And we're going to come back and we're going to take some of this away. Pretty soon we'll be switching to a regular spindle gouge. This is a little bit too hard to get it really thin here. And what I'm doing is I'm just creating a taper. It's going to be the thinnest right in this area right here. So we pretty much got that done for the roughing gouge. I'm going to grab me a larger spindle gouge. This is a 1/2 inch. Yeah, I can move my tool rest in a little bit more. And we're just going to work towards the headstock some more here. Need to lower the tool rest for this tool a little bit. And I'm going to angle it so I can get a better line of cut. Not quite there yet. There we go. Sometimes it takes a couple times just to get that right. I'm going to stop right here, and I'm going to grab that small detail gouge again. So I want to put a bead right in this area. So I'm just going to do the same kind of cut, straight up and down, and then I'm just going to turn it and do the opposite way. Start with the bevel rubbing, then lift your handle a little bit until it starts cutting. Just give it a twist there. You don't need to get it really perfect because sandpaper is your friend when it comes to getting these shapes just right. It really helps with rounding over beads, getting the coves nice and smooth. The reason I stopped before I got too thin is because the wood would be too weak to create a detail like that. So now we're going to come back with the detail. Still too high. When it comes to making finials, you want to make sure you got your tool rest at the right height. And we're going to come back this way. Now, depending on what you're going to use the finial on, like Christmas ornaments, they can be a little thinner because they're just going to be hanging on a tree. But if you're going to put them on a box or something, you want a little bit more robust because people are going to tend to grab that finial to open the lid. So you want it just, you know, a little thicker for unless it's the ornate box, it's not going to really be used. It's going to be on the shelf most of the time. Then you can go a little thinner. But if it's going to be used, you know, sitting on somebody's dresser or something and used a lot, then I would leave a little more meat on the wood. So I'm just going a little bit thinner through here. You come back, you want to work your way towards the center, going back and forth going from towards the tailstock and then back to the headstock again. You don't want to go uphill on the cut, because then you'll be fighting the fibers of the wood and you can snap the finial. So I'm going to show you something that helps with proportions here. I use a straight edge. This is just a straight ruler here. And what I want to do is I want to match that where that bead is right there. And so I want the onion to end up being about this thick right here. That way we got a nice proportion, so you can see how the ruler is riding up on that a little bit. So we could bring it out that far, but that'd be a little too much. We've got this detail touching plus the bead, so that would make a good size there. So we'll work that down till we get a nice proportion there. So we're just wasting some wood here, taking it down. I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to grab that sandpaper here. Do some sanding right through here, this area, where it's the thinnest, before we go any further. And we're still got a little ways to go. We're pretty much almost there. So I'm just going to take some of this away here. we should have the proportions right. All right, good. Now we can start creating the onion shape. To do that, it's pretty much the same thing I did with the small detail gouge, but with the larger spindle gouge here. Is just get that bevel rubbing. Lift your handle a little bit. And I'm going to switch back over. There, you can still see that. Yep. You guys can be able to see in the smaller picture, you'll be able to see how I'm moving the handle around. So we're just going to start that cut again. We're going to bring it in. And we're just going to give it a twist and turn at the same time as we push in till we're just about 90 degrees. You don't want this top bevel hitting the wood or you can get a catch. So we're just going to clean this up now. Looks like we just about got the proportions right by the looks of it here. I'm going to grab my straight edge and we'll have a look. We're pretty close. So I'm just going to touch that right there. This one, and then tapping the bead. And all three spots are touching, so that's good. So if the onion was too big, it wouldn't be touching the bead right there. So we got this point and this point right here, all touching. So that's what I was looking for. So I'm just going to do a cleanup cut going this way just a little bit here. We do have some tool marks, and we can go a little bit deeper, get that detail a little bit going in a little further in like that. Takes a light touch. It just, you know, with practice, pretty much anybody can do finials. It just takes some time at the lathe. And once I get done sanding here, feels like there's like a little bit of bump. It looks like I can see one right there. A little bit of a high spot right in this area. But I'm going to feel that with my fingers just to see. Yeah, right there. So I'm just going to come back in with my spindle gouge and just kind of touch that up a little bit. Just get that nice gentle cut going here. When it comes to finials, just the slightest out around type of things. If you got little bumps and stuff, they will show up in the final product when you're done. Just like I can see it right there on the lathe. Okay, so we pretty much got that done and gone. So you can see how easy this is without the support. The wood is very versatile, it's very strong, and stronger than some wood turners think when it comes to doing things like this. So you got a nice looking shape going there, as you can see. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a cove right here, right past the onion. So we need to take a bunch of this wood down. I'm going to grab my larger spindle gouge, turn the tool rest back over straight so you get a good angle of attack. And we're just going to start whittling this down a little bit here, going back and forth. And we're just going to take some of this away so we have an even details here. That way these high sections are going to be equal. And we're just going to keep going back and forth until we get towards the center there. Work your way to the middle. going back and forth. You don't want to climb that wall this way because you will get catches. Take some of that down. And we can come back here and match that cut. Get it matched up there. You can go a little thinner. Some of that away. Need to round this area off a little bit. It's a little too straight. And we need to lower this down a little bit to equal the, just by eye, you can pretty much tell. And we're just working our way down towards the middle here until it looks proportionately right. Just grab some sandpaper here, just kind of roll it up a little bit. Okay, so I do have a tool mark right there, but it looks like the sandpaper took care of that. And we're just going to sit back and judge, see how that curve works. And it looks like I need to take a little bit more off on my right side or my left sides here. So some couple more light cuts here just towards the center. And we'll sit back. And that looks about right. Just nice, easy cuts now. So we'll just roll that sandpaper over so it'll fit in the curves. You guys can see how that's coming out. I got this piece of cardboard here so you guys can see it instead of my lathe bed, so make it a little easier to see it. I'm just going to keep going back and forth with the sandpaper a little bit. You don't want to round over these little sharp details. Those really help make the piece stand out. So I'm going to grab me a smaller spindle gouge here. It's cut back almost like a detailed gouge, but not quite. It's going to let me get into these areas right here. I need to raise my tool rest for this one. It is a smaller tool. Make sure we're going to be on the center there. Yep. We need to take a bunch of wood down here. And we're just going to do the same kind of cut. We're just going to start it at 45 degrees this time. Do a push cut into it. Got another nice little detail there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an OG going into this slot here. First I'm just going to round it over. The tool's almost 90 degrees. And now we're just going to create a cove right here. And we're just going to gently bring that curve around. Clean up some of those tool marks. And a little bit too much there. We need to curve that curve into there a little bit better. And there we go. And I'm just going to create a detail just like that. And then this is going to be where the piece would attach to either the box or Christmas ornament here. So I'm just going to take this down. This looks a little too big for my liking. You can adjust as you go, of course. So I'm just taking away some of this wood here. I'm not sure how much, well, you guys can see that detail there. So I'm going to grab me my parting tool now. I'm just going to do an opposite cut. Just going to bring it in and just do a gentle backward slant there. Then I'm just going to, this is where I would part it off. Before I get too crazy, if I was to put this in a Christmas ornament, I would measure the size of tenon I need. First, I would want to sand everything that I just did. If you have any questions, please open your mics and ask. It's hard for me to keep an eye on the chat room while I do this, so it's easier if you guys just open your microphones, if you can.
Scott, what kind of wood are you using?
Oh, this piece is a piece of maple. Maple does it's a hard maple, tight grain, so it does a really good finial. You wanna use a good tight grain wood. I do make them out of walnut. I make them out of cedar, but maple is ash. You can get away with it, but it's so open grain that you might find some flaws in it when you get down to making the little details. So it makes it more difficult that way. I find for a light colored finial like this, maple is really, really nice. Black, black wood, ebony, they make really nice finials, but it's a little out of my cost league here, so kind of avoid that if I can. If anything, I'll ebonize it with either a black dye if I want the wood to be black. I use a marine black leather dye, alcohol based, and it just blackens everything. You can't see the grain in the wood or anything, so it makes it just a solid black piece. So this is where I would create the tenon to go in the, or into the lid of a box. I would measure the size, but I don't have a box to put it in today. So I would measure that first. I would start way back here to start the measurements. That way I have a little extra room in case I mess up and I go too small. So I'm just creating the tenon. You would size this, whatever size hole that you're going to put it in. One thing I do to make this fit better is flush. Where is it? Okay. So I got a very small parting tool. These are all like pin making tools. If you're into making pins, a lot of you probably have small tools like this. What you want to do is you want to create an undercut right where this tenon is. That way this outside edge is going to rest right on the top of the wood. You don't want a flat bottom. So you just come in like this and create just a small concave in there. Hollow that out just a little bit. And I'm going to grab me my other small parting tool here. This one, let me show you what I did with this one. Forgot to mention that. To create that hollow on the bottom, I created a slant when I sharpen it. It's this direction right here, but I would use it this with the lower point to my left. And that way when you're doing the cut, you're doing the undercut here, and when you get down to the bottom of that tenon, it's going to sit flush against the tenon. And that way you know you've got that hollow right there. Just a little tip there that I like to do. So it's just cut on a slant, sort of like a skew would be. Now this small one is just cut straight so I can cut these off. And I almost take it off. So I don't want it, there's barely anything holding that on. It's holding all that, it's not shaking around or anything, but it's got like not even a 1/16 of an inch of wood holding this on. And you can just give it a twist. And if you need to flatten that off, you just put sandpaper on something hard like a lathe bed and just scrape it back and forth. You just take it and see it's got a little bit of a nubbin on the bottom. You just take it and that way this will sit in the bottom of the hole, and you don't want that nubbin maybe pushing against it. You shouldn't make the tenon so deep so it's flat on the bottom of the hole anyway. You need a little bit of room for glue. That just quickly gets rid of that little nubbin that was left behind. So this is an onion. That's what I like to call the onion shape. So I hope you'll join me next time as we explore the craft of wood turning together. See you next time.